Hello everyone, Cello Excel here. Today I'm going to do a different type of video, which I have never done, and it's sort of in celebration of the upcoming milestone of 5,000 subscribers, which hopefully will be happening very soon. Also to thank my subscribers and to thank my members especially. You guys are amazing. And what I thought I would do today is just talk. I'm not going to have too much editing, except for maybe to take out ums and ahs and points where I take too long to think. And what I wanted to do today was just sort of face to face talk to you about 10 things I think are maybe uncommon or maybe even unpopular opinions about classical music. And for this video, I have a list here I created of 10 points I thought were really important to share with you. And they may be controversial, and I'd love it if you left comments as we go. This isn't being streamed, but you can take it that way and write them down, uh, whether you agree with them or not. My first point here I have is classical music didn't become unpopular because people got less intelligent. The first thing I want to say is that I really do think that classical music was a lot more popular even 30 or 40 years ago when I was a kid. Certainly, it was a lot more popular 100, 150 years ago. In the most recent video I did on List, a lot of people said, well, classical music was just for the elites. But it's not true. Classical music was popular with the middle class, the rising middle class, which started in the late 1700s, also meant that they had some money to spend on concerts. And people wanted to not emulate the upper classes because they thought they were better than them, but because they thought that they enjoyed the better things in life. And so people would go to public concerts, they would go to museums. They had a little bit of disposable income as the middle class rose. What the upper class could only afford to do before, the middle class now was able to do. But especially in recent years, classical music has become less popular. This may be a little bit unpopular because it goes against some of what you guys have been commenting. I don't think it's because people have been becoming less intelligent. I think it's probably because, as some of you have pointed out, that popular culture has shifted. I think a lot of people now follow uh, more of what is going on in the rap world, pop music world, uh, uh, dance music, other areas than classical music, which is just pure sit down music. But what we have to remember is that people still appreciate it, even if they don't realize it, because you have classical music in background music, you have it in movies, you've got it in video games. A lot more people are actually exposed to it probably than ever before, especially because of technology. But like I say in the last video, that technology is a bit of a two-edged sword because you've got more access, but it means that classical music is less special. So you have more access to everything. And our attention is split because it's split among so many different types of musicians, so many different types of music, and also all the different streaming platforms for movies and TV and video games and everything else that your phone provides. But I don't think people have been becoming less intelligent. I think that's wrong. I think that it's actually demonstrably true that education has gotten better and better over the centuries. Maybe our standards have gone down a bit in America with mathematics or other specific areas, but I don't think that we're less smart people. I think there's a different phenomenon going on, and I still think there's a great potential there for people to enjoy classical music. And the next thing I have here is the biggest problem in classical music is not elitism, it's disconnection. So that sort of ties into what I just said. People, it's not that people have a misconception that only the elites drive in their BMW 700 series, you know, to a classical concert, and they're all dressed. Everyone's dressed in a tuxedo, and it's just not true. What I do see in classical music concerts that I give and that I go to are people, older people, and then younger people, like in their teens and early 20s. The older people, we can explain they've been raised in the tradition and they love classical music. The younger people are often really avid music lovers who perform, who play. They're learning it in school. Maybe they're conservatory students, but they're actively involved with music. I think what happens with that middle area, and you can even see this when I look at my stats on YouTube, that people who watch my videos tend to be in their teens and early 20s, a little bit early 30s, and then there's a huge gap until you get to mid 50s, like my age, and then older. I think what's happening there is really fascinating. I think people get out of school, they get a job, they get busy with their lives, and they think of classical music as non-essential, which is sad. So I think that they're disconnected from to classical music. They're not connected any longer to it. I don't think that it's really a problem of not understanding it, because I think a lot of those young people who would have kept going to concerts go much less frequently or just stop going. The third point I have here is musicians are often trained to play correctly, but not always to communicate. So I came out of a conservatory environment, and what's happened recently, and when I say recently, I mean like the past 30 years or so, is that audiences now expect perfection. And that's because of the digital era where we can edit out anything, and we can even edit out in out of tune notes, not even another take. We can zap a note and make it more in tune. And that creates an impossible situation for performers, because now we're expected to go on stage and play absolutely flawlessly, because we're afraid, maybe rightfully so, maybe not so much, that people will say, it's not like the recording I heard. I heard an out of tune note within the first 15 minutes, or there was this little mistake, or it wasn't balanced exactly the way I thought it would be. And that's just crazy, because the humanity is out of, you remove the humanity out of those CD performances, those downloads you get off of Spotify. They're removed because they're too perfect. And a great performance still has flaws in it. That's the humanity of it. I don't think you want to remove that. But still, we as musicians, we come out of conservatory, we're trained, you do not make mistakes. You do not play out of tune. It's extremely harsh. It's very harsh on musicians. A lot of people quit. And it also creates an environment where people don't want to take risks. They don't want to take musical risks because they don't, because of this environment of people being hyper vigilant for you to make these mistakes. So that is another issue, that you're not getting the variety of performances you used to get 50, 60 years ago even. Now, my fourth point relates to that. Competitions have changed the way musicians think. Music competitions, and I've been in some, I've won some prizes in some, and I've lost some. And I've also been a judge in competitions and auditions. And what you find is the mentality totally changes. As a judge, I'm not there. I should be, but I'm not there to enjoy the performance. I've got too many people to deal with, and my job is to eliminate them down to a small pool, or maybe even to just one winner. And to do that, I have to have reasons to eliminate the person. It can't just be my gut instinct or just how I feel that day. It's got to be something more objective or numbers based. So if someone plays and two people play similarly, but this one person has more mistakes than the other, then that person will get eliminated. I've been the recipient on the receiving end of that, and I've given out those the results of that basically too. It's not healthy. It's not good. I try to be the sort of judge who can overlook that and say, this person did make more mistakes, but they're so compelling. But then that means the performance has to be really compelling. And what would there be in our backgrounds that have set us up for that, given what I said about conservatories? And so what happens is we get to an obsession with perfection, because most of us, not all of us, but most of us need a job. We need to be able to earn a living. And to do that, we need to win competitions or audition for jobs. Even if you're going to be a college professor, which I am, I had to audition and give a recital. I had to perform. I had to have a certain standard. And so that means that we have this mentality that everything has to be perfect or else. And especially added to the fact that we do that when we're young. And when you're young, it's hard to be a risk taker when you're trying to get a job. It's just so different, I believe, from taking a job interview to be an engineer or an accountant. You just need to show that you're solid, you're good at what you do. Now, if engineers and accountants, tell me if I'm wrong. I could be totally wrong. But at least with art, you should be showing that you have something special to add to it, something different and unique. And you just don't get jobs that way much anymore. So that is a difficult point. The next point I have here is that recordings have changed classical music more than most people realize. It's human nature to want to make a perfect recording. For example, it's very hard for me to do this video right now like this raw. I know I'm not going to edit it. I'm not going to add any B-roll to it. It's very hard not to present big entertaining show. And it's very hard to make a recording and leave it with a few imperfections. When you have so many takes and you like this one take so much, it really is where you let it all go and you're very musical, but there, because you did that, there's a couple spots where you're a little bit out of tune or you missed a note. You just say, I can't use that take. I can't use it. So you don't take that take and you take the safer one. And what ends up happening is that you get more homogeneity. You get more similarity to all the performances out there. You get differences in tempo. You get differences in interpretation. But a lot of the differences are more in how it's mic'd, how it's mixed, and stuff like that. When you listen to performances of music, uh, classical, jazz, even popular music from 70, 80 years ago, you get vast differences in performances. And you have a real variety and real different viewpoints. And was a real reason to record that Beethoven sonata for the 100th time because it's going to be different. And now recordings are just not that different. What's happened is that the perfect performance became the standard, whereas before the standard was the most interesting and compelling performance. That went without saying. And now, unfortunately, I feel a lot of the time that's secondary. And that's why when I watch performances on YouTube, I like the live performances because people are taking more risks there. There will be mistakes there. And then I notice whether or not it's perfect after the fact. My sixth uncommon opinion here is that many professional musicians aren't as happy as they could be. I did a video on this, specifically orchestral musicians, but it really could be anybody in the music field. That is my second best performing video, and I don't know how to feel about that. I thought I was being positive in that video. I wanted to share with you an issue that's real, bring it up, and then tell you why it's happening and then what I think the solution is. A lot of people are unhappy in the job because of the things I've already mentioned, but also because those expectations are there. And also there's other expectations like the narrowing repertoire. Because we're less of a risk-taking group now, we won't program that crazy 21st century piece unless it's been proven before. We have other recordings on YouTube or Spotify that are doing really well. Okay, then we'll do it. And then if we want to play even by something by a popular composer, we're going to do the famous sonata that composer wrote, not the one that's not so famous, because that might not help my career just as much. And that makes musicians unhappy because we're artists, so we like to be creative. And if we're restricted, we don't like that. Now, I did a video on are conductors really necessary? And it was sort of tongue in cheek. And I explained why they are necessary. I think they're usually necessary. And someone left a brilliant comment I thought was hilarious. They said, somebody needs to keep those 100 egos in check. Yeah, there's something to that. We all do have our egos. I hope I'm working on becoming a better person and not having an ego. So let me put it this way: we all have our different artistic visions, and we don't like to be put in a box. Otherwise, why pick a creative field? So I think that lends itself to musicians being unhappy if they can't do what they want. Does that make us whining crybabies? Probably a little bit. I will admit it. So the next thing I think is an unpopular or uncommon opinion is that the audience is not the problem. I think a lot of people think, well, our audiences are uneducated, so they just don't get it. And that's why our audiences are dwindling. So that's why our orchestras have to do collaborations with dancers or rap artists or something like that, or we have to do popular music, or we have to have a movie in the background. It's the audience's fault. If only we had an educated audience, then we wouldn't need it. And so we find the audience to blame, and then we go, oh, it's the public schools and all of that. I really don't think it's the audience problem per se. That's the proximal cause, but I don't know if that's the original root cause. I feel like many people love powerful music or music that speaks directly to you if it's presented in the right way. Look at someone like Benjamin Zander. Look him up on YouTube after you've watched this video. You'll see many of his videos have millions of views. He's not a YouTuber. He's done TED Talks, and full disclosure, I was a student of his at New England Conservatory. I was in his class. I wasn't a cello student of his. He has a way of presenting the music. He'll introduce it in a certain way and playing it and performing it, which offers the word possibility, a word he used all the time, possibility and contribution. Those are his two biggest words. And when you approach the art that way, it speaks to an audience in such a genuine and raw, direct way. An audience can still decide it's not for me, but they will respect it because they know what you're giving them is something that's honest and true. If they think that you're trying to persuade them or you're putting on an act or you're trying to sell them something, we're suspicious of salespeople. I was a salesperson when I went through college. I actually, believe it or not, worked as a telemarketer for a while to get through college. And I know how people feel about that. We don't want to be musical telemarketers. We want to sell the music in a way, but what we want to do is communicate it in a direct way. And I think what's happening is some audience members know they're being pandered to. And so some of the people that come might not have been the people that were going to come to your concert anyway. And they're not going to come back. You're not going to make them seasoned subscribers out of that concert you're doing. On the other hand, the people who would have come more, who would have been the seasonal subscribers, who would have come to all of your concerts, would do it if you be true to yourself. If you were only true to yourself and just giving them what you have and say, look, this is me, this is my performance, or this is my orchestra, this is my string quartet. And you may not like it, and that's fine, but I'm going to present it to you as honestly as possible. If it's not for you, that's totally fine. I think we make it too easy. It's too facile to simply blame the audience for lower subscriptions. And because that's also because you'll see, yeah, there are certain areas where orchestra concerts and classical concerts are declining, but there are other places in the country and around the world where they're increasing. So let's look at what they're doing. People are still people. We don't have incompetent audiences who are uneducated. That's really kind of insulting. It's not the audience's fault. This is your art. Make the audience excited about it. Show them the possibility. Present it to them in the right way. Number 8 might be a bit of a controversial one, but it comes off of this last video I did on Franz Liszt and the Virtuoso. It's we lost the idea of the classical musician as a cultural personality. Why would that matter? Well, you think about it. Classical music is probably 1% to 1.5%, depending on how you calculate it, of the market share of music. The big personalities are found where? They're found in pop music. It's about the person. I don't want to denigrate anyone's ability, but you think of someone like the big famous singers like Beyonce and Taylor Swift. They're talented. They know how to sing. They're excellent musicians. I don't think it's necessarily that what they're doing now is so moving that it changes people's lives just with their singing. I think the reason people follow them so closely is because of the personality. They give everything of themselves. That's what a great performer does, no matter what type of music you're talking about. And remember, Duke Ellington said, it sounds good, it is good. Okay, so don't knock pop music, jazz, or whatever. If people enjoy it, they enjoy it, and that's the story. When I think of the classical music world, with very few exceptions, we've lost that personality associated with the music that we had with Liszt, that we had with Paganini, Clara Schumann, Mendelssohn, these people who were composers and performers, but also showmen, but in a sincere way, in a way that brought you the music that was sort of all wrapped up in who they were as well. Pop music stars know this very well. Maybe it's their producers or the publicists who know it. Who knows? But in the classical music world, I can think of very few people. I can think of like uh, Yo-Yo Ma. He's known as and I know him personally. I mean, he's not a great friend of mine. I've played for him a couple times. I met him a few times. He's known as a warm, wonderful person, philanthropist. He's always very, very humble. He brings that persona when he plays. Someone like Long Long, who's an incredible showman, and I don't think he's fake. Other people disagree. I think he just feels the music in that way. And I'm struggling to think of other people at the moment. I'm sure there are other people, but even if you do, and please remind me in the comments, think of other people. The issue is that there aren't that many of them. If I'm not trying to say that we should all become showmen, showwomen, and just make the whole thing a big light show and make it look like pop music. But I think there's something to be said about when you have someone like Lang Lang, or Yu Jia Wang is another one, who takes the music and is so brilliant of a performer, so brilliant of a musician, but is also an actor in the best sense, meaning they become the music they're playing. That makes a connection that just can't be denied. I put it this way: whenever I would go to a Yo-Yo Ma concert or Emerson String Quartet concert, I studied with David Finkel, who was in the Emerson String Quartet. I would go in thinking, this is going to be great. I know it's going to be great, even though I've heard them many, many times. And when I get there, it's always a little better than I thought it could be. I don't know how they do it. It's always better. It's because of that sincerity. It's not a cult of personality. It's because they've become the people, the composers, the music themselves. They've projected that as a human. I don't know if it's not the same way as pop music musicians do it, but I think that's something that we are missing a lot these days. The next point I have here is modern musicians need to stop apologizing for classical music. I feel like a lot of us take often will take two approaches. One is to say, "Oh, I know it's hard to understand, and I'm sorry about that," and that, or take the other extreme and say, "Well, you just need to get educated. You just need to know about it. It takes a lot of investment." It's not that either of those viewpoints is not true; they both are true. But I don't think we need to be defensive about it. We don't need to make arguments or make excuses. We need to present it to them. If we want to convince people about how incredible classical music and jazz music is, we need to present it in a true way, not just give a performance, not just do the best we can at a performance. That's the minimum. We need to evangelize for it. We need to bring it out into the community. And I know that people have commented that, oh, well, that's obvious. Well, if it's obvious, then do it. I don't see much of it. I don't see enough of it. If you're one of the people who does it, I apologize. I find that the people who do it do a lot of it. And so that's great. I really admire you. Let's copy them. because the people who bring it into the community are the ones who make the impact. Uh, I'll have every now and then someone come up to me and say, I saw you play in my elementary school. And the guy is now 30 years old. And I fell in love with classical music because of that. Right. I'm sure that 99 other kids didn't feel that way. If you don't do it, you don't get even that one person. So you can't start thinking of it as a cost benefit equation. You have to go out and do it and keep doing it and doing it over and over again. And not just doing it, but present it with your whole heart. Nothing is a gig. Nothing is a gig. My wife's piano teacher hated the word gig. He said, every time you perform, it's a performance. Even if you're playing background music for the cocktail party after a wedding, you're still doing something important. Everything is a performance, and you never know when you're going to make an impact. We have to stop making excuses for that. The other thing is that constantly explaining and apologizing and trying to make arguments for classical music or jazz, it actually tends to have the opposite effect. It puts more distance between you and the audience, because they're like, well, if this needs so much explanation, why do I need to go to a concert or even listen to it? I've got lots of music accessible on my phone with a couple of taps. So I think the very act of explaining and making excuses for it actually goes against what the goal that you're trying to reach. And so whenever you try to convince someone of something, if you can't bring them in naturally, you tend to push them away a little bit. If you ever go door to door and knock on people's doors and say, hey, have you ever considered classical music? Well, what do you think is going to happen? Are they going to want to go to a concert? But if you left a flyer about a free concert you're giving next week, door to door, and just left it there, maybe a few people will go. There's no pressure. They might be interested. We just have to stop making excuses. It doesn't get us anywhere. The last uncommon opinion I have to share is I still believe classical music has a future. I really believe it. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a classical musician. The reason I believe that is that any art that is powerful, emotional, or meaningful, or touches people in some way is evergreen. This is why we can go to a Shakespeare play, something that was written 400 years ago, more than 400 years ago, perhaps, and it might be about something that doesn't exist, a situation that doesn't exist specifically the way it did in Shakespeare's day, but we relate to it because it's great art, and we can relate it to our current situation. It's why we can read uh, ancient stories from the ancient Greek and relate it to our current day. It's why we can read novels from the 1800s or look at medieval paintings. Any great art touches the spirit. It's evergreen, even if it was something specific, specific to that time and place. It's something that touches us. It's something that moves us. And that's why classical music definitely has a future. It's evergreen. And not everything it's very rare that you say, I love every single thing written by Mendelssohn or Beethoven or Amy Beach. Very rare. Even the composers themselves had favorites and even disliked some of the things they wrote. But the music touches people. It did it then. If it does it now, it's going to do it in the future. The whole point is that classical music is powerful. It's powerful in that it can immediately communicate an idea which might take a whole novel to communicate in just a few seconds or a few minutes of music. We can relate to it right away. It has that power. It has that potential. And what that means then is that the responsibility falls on us as performers. If a performance of Haydn or Debussy is not doing anything for the audience, you don't go blaming Haydn and Debussy. I'm sorry, it's not their problem. And it's not because, well, we live in a different time. No, this music is evergreen. You can make it matter. You can make it matter to the audience. Maybe not to every last member of the audience. That's a tall and maybe impossible order. But we as musicians, we can make it matter because the music is there. It's powerful. Wouldn't it be a shame if we know of all this incredible music that changed our lives and we know that it can do the same for other people and we don't even give them a chance to hear it because we've made all the excuses I've talked about up to now, and 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 we haven't done our best. Now, sometimes we try our very, very best and it still doesn't work, and that's okay. But I always say you don't want to be the person that says, it didn't work because I didn't try. It didn't work because I didn't give it a try. If you try your hardest and it didn't work or it didn't work as well as you thought it would, that's okay. That's your contribution to this world. And any little bit, every little bit matters. If you've touched one other person, you've made a connection with even one other person with your art, your music, your compositions, your performances, then you've made a huge difference. And the people who are watching this, who are amateur musicians or simply music lovers, you know this is true. You heard a performance that moved you so much, and maybe the performers themselves didn't even know it. So tell us in the comments, let everyone know that the performers do matter. But we performers, we got to stop making excuses. We've got to stand up, step up to the plate and do our jobs. So I want to thank you for spending time with me. It's these 10 points I've come to realize. I spent most of my life as a professional musician, and I realized that a lot of things that we just think are true or assume are true simply aren't. If you haven't left a comment yet, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please also don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see how this video does. It's very different. If you've joined me to the very end, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a great day wherever you are. Bye-bye.